This week's Parsha, it's one of the difficult ones because we have a lot of things that really we don't do anymore, right? So we have the ritual to making someone a priest. We have all the rituals of offering animal sacrifices. We have all these weird clothes that Jewish religious leaders don't wear anymore. At some point, Judaism recognized, back then, Judaism recognized that Torah was talking about a specific time. Some of the rituals. By the way, let me just do a parenthesis. I told this earlier today. I had a conversation with parents of kids studying to become Bnei Mitzvah. And I was telling them that in my first semester of rabbinical school, I had a course on Mishnah. So the Mishnah was the first document produced by the rabbinic movement in the year 220. Up to that point, there was a prohibition against writing the oral Torah, the oral tradition. It had to be transmitted orally. But then the rabbis realized that this opposite teachings were being assigned to the same rabbi. It wasn't a problem that there were opposite teachings if they had been assigned to different rabbis, because debate was always part of the Jewish tradition. But the fact that opposite teachings were being assigned to the same rabbi meant there was some corruption in the process of transmission of that tradition. So they decided to write it down. And so when I was learning the Mishnah for the first time, my first semester of rabbinical school, we were in a specific seder of a specific order of the Mishnah called Yoma that deals with the high holidays. And there were some of the traditions described in that book that were absolutely irrelevant to us, at first glance at least, because they all described what happened in the temple and rituals that cannot happen anymore because we don't have the temple. And there were things that were still relevant, like how long the fast should be, and what time do you start and what time ends. But the more we studied those texts, the more apparent it became that those texts that were still relevant to us, yeah, they were relevant, what time the fast starts and at what time the fast ends, but they were kind of mechanical. Like there weren't any depth of wisdom in them. On the other hand, the texts that had become irrelevant, they talked about how the high priest had to orient his heart before offering the sacrifice. The sacrifice wasn't relevant anymore, but the orientation of the heart remained really important. And there was wisdom in learning those passages. So the same thing applies here in this week's Parsha. It talks about rituals that we've long have abandoned, but they remain relevant. And one of the issues that I was thinking about, I've been thinking a lot about how South African Jews describe themselves. And it's becoming more and more frequent that people would say to me things like, I'm Orthodox, but I'm not religious. And which is kind of an oxymoron, right? Because being Orthodox is, in that narrow understanding of what being religious is, means being religious. If you are Orthodox but not religious, then I'm sorry, but you're not Orthodox. Someone told you a version of Jewish life in which there is authentic Judaism and inauthentic Judaism. And authentic Judaism is called in that version orthodoxy. And then no one wants to be inauthentic, right? Everyone wants to be. So someone who doesn't do any of 613 mitzvot, which, by the way, it's what it means to be Orthodox, is to try to keep as many mitzvot as possible in that narrow understanding of what the mitzvot mean, then Someone who doesn't keep any of them will still say, I'm Orthodox. Why? Because I want to be authentic. Right? If you could have a Louis Vuitton bag or a copy of a Louis Vuitton bag, what would you have? You want the original one, right? But that is, I'm sorry to tell you this on Shabbat, that is a lie. Right? There are many different ways of understanding the Jewish tradition. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, who was the founder of modern Orthodoxy in America, said that the bright and white life of the divine reaches us through this dome of colored glasses in such a way that the white light gets to us in many different colors. Judaism is plural, is multivocal. It has many different understandings. And being someone with authentic Judaism might mean that you behave Orthodox, and you were Orthodox. There's nothing wrong with being Orthodox. But behaving Orthodox is the reflection of a worldview that most of South African Jewry doesn't have. Someone told them, you need to say that you're Orthodox because you want to be authentic. But be authentic to yourself. The rabbis, when the rabbis looked at the rituals described in this week's Parsha, they realized that it wasn't possible to keep that same lifestyle after the destruction of the temple. The world had changed, and Judaism had to change with it. To keep doing the things written in Tetzaveh would be lying to the reality in which they were living. And so what did the rabbis do? They decided that Judaism had to change together with the world. That's what progressive Judaism means. Progressive Judaism is a form of Judaism that honors the questions and the challenges that each one of us brings to this place. And it's a Jewish tradition, it's a form of Jewish practice that honors the times in which we live and the place in which we live. There's no sense in walking with a jacket that was adequate for a minus 20 degree winter in Poland when it's 35 degrees outside in South Africa. It doesn't make sense to say that women cannot be religious leaders in the 21st century when women are presidents and heads of Supreme Courts and all the relevant things that they want to be. So why shouldn't they be also rabbis and cantors and everything? It doesn't make any sense to say that men and women should not sit next to each other in a synagogue in a world in which men and women are struggling to be partners in every aspect of their lives. And that doesn't mean that we are inauthentic. It doesn't mean that we're honoring the 2,000-year-old tradition of Judaism adequate to our lives, toward the times in which we live, that is true to who we are. So the next time someone tells you, I'm Orthodox but I'm not religious, challenge it back. Ask, how are you Orthodox? Is your life Orthodox? Or are your values Orthodox? Or someone told you that you were Orthodox and you repeated it without challenging it. You are all progressive Jews. All progressive Jews. You might even be a progressive Jew that likes the service in an Orthodox synagogue better than you like the service here. But you're all progressive Jews, as is the majority of the South African Jewish community. And it is our duty and our challenge to make them see that they are all progressive Jews, just like you are all progressive Jews. May God help us in that task, and may it come fast in our days.